Well, let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Do it.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first of all, I just want to thank Heather for returning and thank the new members of the Budget Committee. I was super excited when the application period opened. We started out with 2, we went to 4, then we went to 10, then to 12, and eventually we finished with 22 applicants from the community. And the resumes were such that it was a really competitive field with a lot of community interest and involvement. And so I congratulate you on your appointment. I think that there are many people that would have served well, and but we certainly appreciate you guys and Chris, you returning. And Heather is back. How many years have you served now?
I don't know, a lot.
So,
Not for that much longer.
hey, it's like the mafia. You can't get out that easy. You have to change your name, move to another state. So anyway, so we really congratulate you. We appreciate your expertise coming to this. And when we get going with the specifics, I know you guys are going to have great questions, and we'll be happy to take you guys through it. So we shall start. This is just an overview of the Budget Committee's functions, and obviously it is intended to help you understand your role, how this committee works. Along with the board, equal members of both will approve the budget from the Budget Committee, and then it will go and be approved and adopted by the board in June. It's really important, though. You guys are key communicators around what we're trying to do, and the decisions that we are going to make. And we just appreciate your time. You could be anywhere else tonight, and you're here. Let's go to the next slide. Basically, working for the school board, the board is going to set its district goals and policies. The budget is going to reflect the resources that are available and how they've been allocated to implement those goals. And as we talk about different line items, expenditures, or particular projects, how does this help achieve the district goals, and does this fit within our policies? So the goals that I propose this year and we're working on are district instructional leadership, supporting instruction. This is obviously going to be an ongoing goal. Obviously, that's generally what we are trying to do. One of the things we've asked people to do, for example, is to just spend more time in classrooms this year. We do have some emerging awareness of that, and we could talk a little bit further. There are things that have been going on here for years that are very good, and we're going to keep those, and we're going to build on what we have to further improve. I would say that one of the things that we will get out of this is we will get a better relationship with our teachers union. If you read the papers, you will know that we've had kind of a interesting history here over the last couple of years as we kind of figure out who each other is and come together. But they want the same thing we do, right? They want to be successful in a class. They want our systems to not impede them, but to help them. And so there are a lot of things in that goal. Goal number 2, a balanced budget for 2024-25. We are in the second year of a biennium. We fund from 23 to 25, July 1st. And we are funded by the state over those 2 years. Then the legislature comes together, they'll set another budget at 25, and that will go through 27. So there's a 2-year funding cycle. We are allocated an amount of money. It then comes to us based on our enrollment, $49.51. First year is 49% of that total. The second year is 51. So it kind of gives us a 4% increase in year 2. Goal number 3 is community engagement to support community understanding and acceptance. That is a multi-pronged goal. We are working really hard in our schools right now to build acceptance and less hostility. We are working to diminish bias incidents in our schools. They do occur. We reflect the community. We're just trying to build an awareness of that so that school is safe for all. And anytime we aren't successful with all of our kids, we know that there is an anchor to be dragged down the next 50 years as that generation comes through. So we have to work on that in the present. Next slide. The Budget Committee is established. There's an Oregon revised statute law around how budget committees operate. And again, the purpose by law is to review, discuss, and approve the proposed budget that is presented to them by the budget officer. They are appointed members by the board. Budget committee, and they are there's a vote of the board to do that. Budget committee members cannot be officers, agents, or GAPS employees. You have to be registered voters in the GAPS district. You have to be an American citizen. We're all good there, right? We actually had someone walk out one time at this meeting because he was actually a German citizen. Didn't know he wasn't eligible. And you're all registered voters, and everybody on the budget committee has the same authority. Ultimately, it will be passed on to the board where they will exert a separate authority, but everybody here is a budget committee member. You guys are here for a 3-year term? No?
That means
Which mine,
rolling.
so ours, so
Yeah.
me and Chris should be done soon, right?
How long you been here, Chris?
I think it's been 13 years.
Appreciate you coming back. So current board and budget committee members all together are the budget committee. What is the role of the budget committee? Hear the budget message, and we will come with that at the next meeting. That will be the meeting where we present. This is just a training. The meetings will be in public. It will also be taped. It will be on
People
YouTube.
can watch on YouTube.
Fun.
Yeah.
There will be a point at the end where the public may comment on the budget, discuss and revise the budget as needed, approve the budget, and approve each tax rate or dollar amount. And basically, your final approval will actually have specific numbers that will be entered. Right? That's formally what we will use as our expenditure numbers.
So Andy, on the public comment last year, there's a bit of a confusion over that issue. You guys figured that out this time, so it'll be really clear.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
One-
ne-
go
The next 2 meetings will be open for public comment.
okay. Good, thank you.
So the details are somewhat beyond the budget committee's direct responsibility or role in setting. For example, salaries, benefits, or contract terms for our employees are done through the collective bargaining process. We do not have the ability to set that number in the budget process. We would ultimately take a contract that we negotiate to our school board for ratification. And the union itself must also ratify, so there has to be a combined agreement there. It's possible that we will not have a settlement in the teacher contract by the time this budget is approved. But that is not an uncommon occurrence in the state of Oregon or any state that has collective bargaining. We do have control over the staffing levels, and so we will set the staffing levels based on the money available, what we do, and there's a lot of things that go into that. The budget committee does not decide whether or not a program or service should be provided, and the budget committee does not make or alter district goals or policies. Is this where I hand it off to you?
Thanks, Hope.
Well, I will turn it over, and I will tell you this, I have been, I'm closing my 14th year out as a superintendent. Every year I've had the good fortune to work with this lady, and I really enjoy her and trust her completely, and she has just done a fabulous job in 12 years in Stayton in the North St. Anne School District, and now 2 years here, and I feel like one of the things that happened here is there was a lot of some of the fundamentals had fallen apart a little bit, and it's been a massive, massive job to bring us back to standard in our audits. And this is the lady that has kind of been toiling away for 2 years, and I so appreciate it. So Jane Nofsiger, take it away.
Thank you. It has been a team effort for sure. So I appreciate working with Andy. So you already asked Ryan about the public law, and we will advertise both meetings open to the public, and that was what we did not do last year. So Lindsay is the person who keeps me on track, and she has already set all of that up for us. And you probably know our next meetings are May 1st and then May 29th. The 16th, yeah, excuse me, 15th. 15th and 29th. Can't read my own writing. So as Andy said, the first meeting we will present to you the budget message. And then at that meeting, you will elect your presiding officer over the budget committee. And sometimes they elect a second person in case the first person can't be there. That's very common. And we have reserved June 10th. If for some reason at the second meeting we didn't get the budget approved, we would have June 10th. And also at the first meeting, you will be able to listen to patrons, take input. Last year we had a lot of public input. We had a lot of questions from patrons. And like Andy said, it's great. We have a lot of public interest in our district and in the budget process.
Quick question on the June 10th. That's also a board meeting. Is it going to be at a different time than the board meeting? Thought it was a board meeting.
Did I have that wrong, Lindsay? The third one,
12.
12th. Okay, thank you.
Write it down.
So also, you're probably aware, you have a right to ask questions. Last year, we had an open process where you could email questions so that we were able to prepare answers before the meeting, and we will put that process in place again where you will email Lindsay and send all your questions in. And that's after we've received the budget, presented the budget message to you so that you have the document and are able to send your questions in. And this slide really is just more about the budget committee law. There are, of course, 10 of you. It takes 6 to have a quorum to pass any measure and to approve the budget. And also the tax rate. And the budget's approved. Appropriation is by fund and then by function. So like the general fund, there are 4 functions, and the appropriation is by fund and function. So instruction and supportive instruction, that is the way the budget is approved. And for example, this year in our ESSER fund, we had it approved in a construction appropriation, and we'll have to bring that to the board for a correction because the construction came in less, and so we're moving it to other uses. And so when the budget committee approves the budget and then the board adopts it, that sets our limits on what we can expend the money. This slide just talks about your right to hear from community members and to talk amongst each other. Of course, you can't have 6 of you talk aside from a public meeting that we haven't put a notice in the paper and published a notice. This just says when when you've approved the budget, your duties cease. Of course, the board does have the right, if they had questions, they could reconvene a budget committee and post a public notice, go through all that legal process. And after it's approved, then it moves on to the board. And the board can change each fund, like the general fund or the grant funds, by 10% up or down. If there were a change beyond 10%, say we got a grant or our state funding changed, we would have to reconvene the budget committee. And we would have to maybe do a supplemental budget if we received more than 10% in the general fund. And we have our public hearing scheduled at the June board meeting. And that is hopefully when they'll adopt the budget. Of course, when July 1 comes, if we didn't have an adopted budget, we wouldn't be able to do business. And as I said, the board can make changes up to 10% within each fund, up or down. And this does happen. And I think I already talked about that. They can't change it more than 10%. What if the budget committee members disagree? If you disagree with the approval of the board, you have a right as a citizen to express that concern, but the board does have the right to adopt the budget. And once all public input has been accepted, the board must adopt the budget, as I said, by June 30. And then by July 15th, we have to publish our tax rates with both Lynn and Benton County so that they will be able to assess the correct rates. And I think I talked about the functions. Instruction is 1,000 function, and that's where the majority of our staff is. Can the budget committee convene during the year? Yes, they can. And we just have to make sure we have it open to the public and we publish it on the website, we publish it in the paper. Changes to the budget after adoption. There have been times in my past where we received additional grants greater than 10% of like the grant fund, and we had to do a supplemental budget. And questions? John?
As my first time here, is it or is it majority of people present or majority of?
Majority of people present.
Okay.
But we do have to have a quorum. We have to have,
So you had made the comment that at some point in time, you have a fund right now that you're going to take before the board?
just for an appropriation change.
So how often does that happen?
It hasn't happened yet this year. It's not very common. It is very common to happen in June, just to make corrections, because we can't overexpend in one appropriation even by $1. And so oftentimes in June, we clean up all the appropriation levels and take a cleanup resolution to the board.
And so that's the board that looks at that and not the budget committee at all?
That's correct. And there's always an explanation. There's always something that causes that to happen. Last year we had to do it because we purchased buses we hadn't planned on. This year, of course, the construction projects came in less, and that's a great thing, and so we're able to spend on technology.
You don't have to save that money for the following year for property or?
In this case, the ESSER funds go away.
Okay, just curious. I don't know how.
I wish we could,
Yeah. Would be nice, wouldn't it?
yes. Probably first meeting.
Dean or Andy, I have some questions that are more sort of contextual for the budget, but I don't know if other people had questions about process for the committee before I get into those.
Go right ahead.
Well, I don't know if we want to save these for the first meeting either, because I think normally on the 15th, you'll have the budget message, which will include the proposed budget. For the budget committee, are there any extenuating factors that would be good context for us as we get that first look at the budget? Would you rather we save those questions for the meeting on the 15th? I'm thinking about things like enrollment or PERS costs or overall state funding, legislative changes, those kinds of things.
We intend to put together, typically Jane will begin to go into the specifics and I'll provide some context there. But just in general, we can say that the state was not able to give us as much as they did in the previous biennium this time because we had a huge kicker, right? And so that depressed the state fund a little bit, which has created some pressure, as you can read in the newspapers in Salem and Portland and actually everywhere, right? That the people still wanted to have an increase to deal with the inflation that they're experiencing, right? And so I pulled the chart. We've had about 16% inflation over the last 3 years, something like that, 4, 8, and then 4. And in that time, our teachers who we're bargaining with right now received 2, 2, and 2 because they were in a contract that had set amounts. And so that helped stave off this reckoning, but there is now a point of reckoning. And we do need to treat them fairly. I think, we have a lot of families with 2 people teaching, and, they have fallen behind in terms of what they could buy. And so inflation, we'll talk a lot about that and what that means. We'll talk about the general fund and the kicker and what that has meant for us in this 2-year period and just the strategy. And I know you recall last year we were going to kind of try to feather that a little bit. And we'll go back and review that as well. But that is a challenge that we face right now because this coming year is the second of those 2 years on that revenue. And so it's going to force us to change a little bit. At the same time, we had the federal funds that Jane talked about, the ESSER funds, which were COVID relief. Many school districts in Oregon, and the great example is Salem-Kaiser, they expanded their workforce using that money, and then it is done. And so that has caused a lot of people, they laid off, I can't remember the number, I want to say 400.
400 is what they're saying for next year.
And so they're actually, Mr. Belleville, welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Sorry.
Not a problem. And so we're just working through, so those are like the extraneous challenges that we're going to have to use. How do you know I didn't mean that? Thank you.
Public's listening.
That's right. So just in a broad way, we'll kind of talk about what that means and how that translates into this year's budget and what we're trying to do this year as we go forward.
You don't just give us numbers, you give us context.
We're going to work on context. Yeah. And then, there's many funds which have very specific budgetary uses. A great example is the Student Intervention Act. It was created by the CAT tax, which is corporate activity tax. And so, but that fund is separate from the general fund and does have some more specific limitations on what we can use that for. There are many of those. We also have federal funds. They're generally title funds, Title I, reading, Title II, staff development, and we have very specific uses for those. And so a lot of times we're cobbling a program by, just figuring out which of these will go where and be best put to use. So another one to remember, the board has by policy an 8% ending fund balance requirement. And so it is a board policy. It could be, tucked in a hole for a year, but our work right now is to try to make sure that we adhere to that.
Is that a new policy, Andy?
I think it's been around for quite a while.
I know we've had an informal one that we try to keep above that. I just wasn't sure that we actually had a formal percentage that we're trying to hit, so.
So we So we have about $127 million budget, and we figured that right around and a little above $10 million. We do believe that's going to be really important because this year we have a couple of challenges, which we have to account for with some cushion. One, of course, is the bargaining. And so, we have to think about how we bring that through. We've really tried to work to build the budget for that. The second one is unemployment. So we bargained with our classified this fall, settled, and we made the assumption that we were going to be paying them for the days that they were here. And I don't have the number of the law, but
Yeah, I don't have it.
it has made unemployment available to all of our classified who are 9-month employees, and we have always built budgets. School districts around the state have built budgets on our aides and our office managers having a less than full year budget, and generally they get insurance year round. This year, we began to really focus on this at Christmas because people said, hey, they can now file for unemployment on breaks and be paid unemployment. And I don't think this wasn't like it was not a law that was pointed directly at these people, but we are captured in that. And so we now have the liability of all of our classified who normally go get summer work elsewhere or whatever, that they could file for unemployment with us. And we're self-insured. So it creates a liability, and we have to be aware of that and just be ready for it.
How prevalent was that over the Christmas break for unemployment?
We did not see any. But
When did it go into effect?
last year.
Oh.
So it began, so then Christmas became a place, and there was a waiting period. Yep, and so districts did see activity where people filed, and then more filed at spring break. We are not aware, right, but we don't know. It's an individual decision, right? Each individual person could go do that. And so different districts have really approached it in different ways. We are going to lobby really hard to correct that in the next legislature, but it just isn't going to affect this summer. So we'll be interested to just see what happens there. So there's just several things, and we'll try to just bring this all together for you guys as we begin the process. So that one's an unknown. Jane had worked out half of the people. Yeah. 50% of our people were to file and take unemployment through the summer, it would be $1.4 million. So that, among other things, is why we have a $10 million reserve ending fund balance.
Can you remind us how much we went into ending fund or at the reserve account last year for budgeting purposes?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. How much of the budget was pulled from reserves as a percentage?
We ended the year with 14 million.
And when do we start? What did we start the year with? I guess my question is did we go into reserve funds to balance the budget last year?
No,
So there was,
12 or 14 or something.
it was 12 the year before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things. We had put up, I think Grant and Roger had expressed that we were deficit spending. So Jane's first year was a year where she had really examined liability accounts and figured out whether we were plus or minus there. So kind of cleansed all that. And at the time we published the budget last year, we proposed 15 million at the end of last year, spending down to 12 and a half, and then spending to 10 or 8% as we ended 24-25. Give Jane a lot of credit. We were able to close some of our accounting leaks. There were just ways that we just did not have a good control of spending. And I think we remember we had planned to go 15, 12 and a half. Well, at the end of last year, we had a bunch of people that had signed contracts around here. We didn't know they existed. So we got all these bills and we finished 14, right? So we were less than what we had told the budget committee by the time we got actually to June 30th. But this year, as we came in, we've had a couple of other things hit us this year, but we're at what, 15, 16?
15.
So we have actually been able to outperform the budget and not go down. We've actually improved the ending fund balance, but of course the revenue is still low, and we'll show you guys how we're looking to survive that as well. So there's still things that we need to do to, you know, completely ratchet down to where we have a lot of spending control. Amazon trucks come to our schools as often as they come to your neighborhood. So there's work to be done still. But I have been really impressed with the people. Every time we really get a hold of something and Jane teaches that to them, they've been really great. They understand it. It's just that we haven't, you know, had those controls, but it's been great.
Any other big, sorry, one more question, I'll stop. Any other big macro issues that are happening statewide for education? Things like, I mean, PERS has always been an issue. Any other major issues like that or legislative changes beyond the potential unemployment issue?
You know, I think, and, you know, I don't know what you guys see at ATI, but the huge challenge, about 10 years ago, there was a book called The Coming Jobs War, and we are definitely, you know, beholden to that along with everybody else. We had a need really this last year to correct our classified staff, and those would be our custodians, our cooks. We saw that the scale ended really low comparatively, and so we face a lot of wage pressure in a competitive environment. It is in the short term easing because some larger districts have, they put too many people in their grants, right? And so there's a little bit of, there's a lot of layoffs occurring right now in this year, but we think that as we go forward long term, we face a really competitive environment for our employees. That's a huge pressure, and I think it sits there. And I think most people who are employing people in this area would say that they face a similar pressure. We face that within the profession of teaching specifically. Some of our classified roles as well. Like we have our own people to do many things in the district. We have our own HVAC guy. We have all these other things. So they came over one day and they showed me comparative, what they can work for in the community compared to what we were then paying. And it was, boy, I felt awful, right? That they, and most of those people have stayed as a result of our correcting their salaries because they have kids in our, you know, they have a lot of quality of life issues. They're really wedded to the district, but we faced the same thing. We did a salary analysis this winter. Our principals are 9% below market, right? And so we, with our comparative districts, the teachers at the top end of the scale are low, and we can't just say, well, too bad, right? It's just, we want to make sure that we are paying an average competitive salary so that people can feel good about being here and not feel like they're losing out. And so that is the overwhelming pressure I think that we face, trying to catch up with the inflation, but yet have these 2 years where we are not able to, you know, we don't have the money that many people do who are, you know, receiving payment for their product or whatever at a higher rate. So that's the challenge I think that is confronting us. All right. We're going to start again at the top, right? We want to make sure that Brent's all caught up. No? And I would just offer, if there is, you know, as we go through this, as you see the budget, if you have questions or if someone asks you a question, you'd like to know the answer, we would be just happy to take you through anything that you might have a question about. And but we'll give you kind of the overall lay of the land, and then Jane will work you through the budget. And again, thanks for being willing to be a part of this.
We'll have the prior year's budget to kind of compare against. Is that something we typically side by side it?
Oh, okay. Certainly we can show you,
Curiosity.
yeah. We can maybe just run a few copies here.
Prior year is shown.
Oh, that's
in
right.
In the
Okay.
documents.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So,
Several
yeah.
years, right? 2 years of actuals and then last year's
Yes,
budget, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that side by side is nice.
Total dollars are there.
And I think positions would be there too, wouldn't they?
FTE.
Yeah. The only other challenge that we see in the long run is, we'll try to put a couple slides in here that show this. 2 years ago, Rob Saxon had done a population projection. And we'll show you our actuals. We have not met that projection. And one of the things that we see is what's called the capture rate. So most population studies will give you live birth in the area, in homes that are in the district. They're then at 6 years old or 5 years old, when they become kindergartners, there's a percentage of those births that come to the district. 92, 93, I think had always been the average that was used here. 93% of live births 5 years before that would become kindergarten. We captured 92 or 93%. That rate has fallen, and we are seeing that. And we'll be able to show you our first grade cohort and all the way up through that can illustrate that change, which has implications.
Is that unique to our area? Is that statewide, nationwide?
It's certainly statewide. I couldn't tell you about nationwide, but the capture rate and its impact that tapers the lower grades is seen in most districts in Oregon.
We seem to be keeping more than most. Like the Portlands and Salems are losing a lot larger percentage than we
Yeah.
are, but we're all losing.
Yeah, it's more severe in a lot of places. Ours looks a little more like, we have our upper grades are pretty good, and then there's a little bit of a taper. Corvallis had a deep budget cut this year. They've already published that and are releasing. And theirs is a combination of capture rate and a lack of housing. So young families just simply cannot get a start in
They have an
Corvallis.
extra tax there.
So I believe they are losing 300 students a year, which is a lot. So,
Indicates that people are moving out. They're being born here and then moving out. Is that what that is indicating?
well, I'm speaking about
Or
Corvallis.
private.
They
Or
just,
private.
they can't, home values and lack of development are really pinching that. And so, and that it could be that people can work there and go to school here and live here. So there's a lot of regional play there. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we'll try to paint a picture of how all that affects us. And some of those, like that has a long-term implication as those lower cohorts begin to move through our elementaries first, and then they'll come to our middle school, and then they'll come to our high school over time, without some other impact.
So I thought when I was reviewing the last year's budget, I thought there was something in there someplace about homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that part of that? So.
Yes. Yes. Birth rate's part of it, homeschool, and choosing other ways to educate.
But it seems to me there were some dollar figures stuck in there for that, for your budget. Was that right? I'll have to go back
Have
and
we
look at
captured
it.
some of the homeschool that would then take classes through gaps?
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Yeah. Because my neighbor boy, they do homeschool, but he goes to
Online.
North Albany Middle School and does some electives.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
maybe
we
that's
do
what
allow that.
What it was about.
Vaguely remember some language in there about that. There's some captured that they can get.
We'll look back through it and see if we have something we can review again.
So where do they get their funding? So that just. for
Who's that?
For children that decide to homeschool, or parents who homeschool. Is there another state, is there more money in the state someplace it goes to so that they then can get money for schooling, or how does that work?
No, so they're paying their taxes right? They're paying their state income tax and probably their property tax, but they are not gaining the benefit of that in terms of education.
Okay.
There's no funding that would go to a homeschool.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't being pulled away from us, but it is in a way.
In
but-
numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't
But
get the
it-
enrollment number.
In numbers,
Yeah.
because we are only paid for the students that are here.
that's right.
Kids can go to online charter schools, which are, like Mill City has sponsored a charter school. There's one in Southwest Oregon. And virtually every small town in Eastern Oregon, their little school districts have a charter school. Paisley, Burns, Baker, like there's a lot of them. And a kid from this community can choose to attend that online, still live here. And in that case, the funding goes first to the district. So if it's Baker online, they would go, the funding for that student would go to Baker, and then they must flow through, I want to say 92% of the funds to the charter school itself. And so over probably the last 15 years, there's been like a charter school war in Eastern Oregon. You can be a charter school. People have turned their whole district. Arlington, Imbler, they just declared the whole district a charter school. And then kids, for example, could leave LeGrand and drive 15 minutes to Imbler. And sometimes those schools will run buses into the other district. So it's become a little more competitive in that regard. I think, what's the little town on the way? Is it Alsea? Alsea was, became a charter school, and they ran a bus through Corvallis to Monroe to pick up kids. And a lot of bad blood from that. But we do not have a charter school here. We do have kids that go to those charter schools. And we, by law, have the ability to eliminate, to say no to kids beyond 3% of our total population. So we can limit the total number of our kids that are going to those charter schools at 3%. We're right at about, we're a little above 3% right now. We have not formally taken that action yet to limit it. Yeah. All right. I'll catch Brent up later. We'll have much to talk about. Are you doing anything this year, or are you just retired?
I'm mostly taking care of grandkids. That's,
Full-time job?
yep, I had t-ball and softball and gymnastics. And then my son-in-law's a deputy sheriff, and he was supposed to relieve me, but you know how that goes
Yeah.
sometimes, so he couldn't. So it's just this
So you don't have-
shuffling kids to wherever I could get them to.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you on the 15th, 16th? 15th. And thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.